A Fox News doctor has an interesting theory on what might lower the suicide rate in the U.S. Check it out.
Two Princeton University economists identified rising death rates in white, middle-aged Americans, driven largely by increases in deaths from suicide, drug overdoses, alcohol abuse, and chronic liver diseases. And when I read that, all I see there is sadness. Like, those are disease. That's when you're sad. There's something more going on than just you're eating badly. What's your read on that? Why that's happening?
I think that, there's been a lot of hopelessness in this country, and the opioid addiction problem has been huge. That's been a huge cause of death, accidental overdoses and suicide especially among teenagers and children. I think that, we have to give our kids hope again. And, I'm hoping with the new administration, we can actually do that, make people feel good about what's going on, support our children, support our seniors, make sure that everybody feels like they've got a fighting chance.
Yeah.
Look, I don't want to blow it up too much because he said, I hope that with the new administration, suicide rates can be lowered. The headlines on this were like, Fox doctor says Trump will lower suicide rates or some shit like that. It was misleading headlines, and that's not exactly accurate. He said, I hope with the new administration it'll lower suicide rates. That's such a goofy thing to say, though. Trump's so great, man. Make it so people want to live. That's what it is. Okay. The funny thing is that they've actually studied this. They've studied not Trump specifically to give him a total pass real quick, but just in general, conservative governments versus liberal governments. And it is true in every study they've done across the board that when you have liberal governments in power, suicide rates plummet. That's awesome. Because he's like, I hope that, Trump will lower suicide rates. Well, based on the track record of the Republican Party or just conservative parties in general the world over, that ain't a good bet, son. And there's a really, really understandable reason why, too. Under conservative governments, by and large, there's different conceptions of conservatism, admittedly. So some people say, hey, I just believe in tradition. That's one view of conservatism. But another common view is small government. Hey, we believe in small government. So what goes hand in hand with small government? Well, cutting the social safety net. So any programs that might help poor people, might help middle-class people, might make it so that the system is more on their side. And yes, they tax the rich more under liberal administrations. Any system like that provides more material support. So it doesn't happen. It's not the case with everybody that, hey, more material support will lessen the burden of depression or whatever it is to the point where you won't kill yourself. But it happens with enough people where it's statistically significant, where if they feel like society is not going to leave them behind, not going to leave them homeless, if they give them some material support when times are rough, hey, you're out of a job, you're in trouble, you can't make ends meet, well, okay, there's unemployment, there's something to fall back on, food stamps to feed the kids, so on and so forth. It just so happens when you have liberal governments that look out for poor and middle-class people more with the social safety net, with redistribution of wealth, less people kill themselves. Because they're not as desperate as they would be if it's conservative governments where they cut these things to the bone and they kind of proudly say, like, yeah, no, we don't believe that's the purpose of government. We don't believe government should be there to be a social safety net and to give people an opportunity and a hand up when they're down. They believe more in the winner-take-all, meritocracy idea of tax everybody low and the social safety net isn't as important as the values to try to pick yourself up by your own bootstraps. So that's why this story is noteworthy to me. It's not, again, I think the headline was a little misleading on Raw Story where they said he says Trump will lower suicide rates. No, he didn't. He said he hopes Trump will lower suicide rates. But it's funny because the exact opposite is actually true when you look at the studies. There's been countless studies on this. In conservative governments, suicide rates increase. In liberal governments, they decrease. And again, it's very understandable, straightforward reason as to why that is.